So we're going to talk about reproducing in SketchUp this piece of furniture here that I'm not sure. Bob, did you find this or?
No, I bought it in England.
Oh, okay, Rob did. So it's called a gentleman's washstand, and it's got an opening here in the top that this bowl goes into for the water. Another opening in the top for some soap. And then it's basically designed for the water to go into another basin down in here. We're going to reproduce this based on the measurements that are specific to this particular piece, but we will make some modifications along the way. For example, this was made pretty cheaply. There are 1/8-inch panels here on the front door that are just framed in with some wood here. We're going to make these solid doors, and so some of we've changed some of the dimensions a little bit on some of the rails and stiles to make them a little beefier, but still for the most part it's going to come out looking just like this. Alright, so I'm going to give you a 5-minute tutorial on 3D drawing. So that's all it will take, 5 minutes. And you'll be an expert like everybody else, right? Alright, so in the 3D world we work with 3 dimensions. And you'll see the orientation of this screen right here. You see how I'm moving around this? Basically, that you literally move around the 3D world. We call these the 3 different axes, the green, red, and blue axis for obvious reasons. And we're going to actually draw in this mode with a couple of basic simple mouse movements. I can move around it, I can shift left and right, I can move basically just any way that I need to so I can see the entire 3D environment. The first thing to understand is in this 3D world, or in CAD drawing pretty much in the first place, is that this is not a circle. There is no such thing as a curved line. There are only straight lines. So if you look at this, zoomed in, you can see that this is made up of a series of straight lines. So whenever I made a circle like this, I can actually change the tool using, there are a number of different tools here on these little toolbars, but I've chosen the circle tool. So on the circle tool you pick a center point and then you tell it what radius you want, and then it'll draw a circle, and then you can also tell it how many sides that you want that circle to be made of, or segments. So if every piece is a straight line, obviously the more segments you have, the smoother the curve looks. But it's literally not a curve, it's just a bunch of straight lines. So I can come in here and I can actually say I'm going to make this out of 8 sides. Oops, let's see, 8. And if you look in, it's actually an octagon. Or I can make this out of 12 sides, or 20 sides, or 30 sides. And the more you have, the smoother it looks, especially as you zoom out. So there is no such thing. That right there is a 3-sided circle. So there is no such thing as a circle. So that's number 1. So knowing that, there are only a couple of major things involved in 3D drawing. I'm going to draw a rectangle here. And you're going to see that you have a line, which we've already seen in all the circles that I was just drawing. So each of these, you got 4 lines. And then whenever you have a series of lines that connect, you get an automatic surface. And this is a surface. Now once you have a surface, then you can make it 3-dimensional. So I'm going to use what's called a push-pull tool, and I'm going to take this surface and I'm going to pull it up. And now, all of a sudden, you have a 3-dimensional object. And so I can look all around this object from different sides. I can have it cast a shadow, that's this over here. So that is really the basics of 3D drawing. If you can make any plane, whether it's a circle, I'll make this back to 20 sides, or a square, you can actually take any of these surfaces and actually build on it. I can take just a rectangle, and I can actually do things like this, or I can take this and I can actually push it through the other side, or I can actually take it to the surface, and we literally have a tube, an opening. So it's really like cutting wood. Now, there are a lot of people that actually use this tool and they do their entire piece, their entire structure, just the way that I'm doing this here, where you take a little bit and you add a little bit, you add a rectangle here, you take some material away, and you end up with a piece just like this is. But the thing here is that this is all one big drawing piece. So it's not like I can actually take this tube, this cylinder that's sitting on top of the square, and actually move it, relocate it. It's all together. So that's not how we're going to draw. We're going to draw the way we build, in pieces and components. So that's that's the gist of it. So with that, we already have measurements for this piece right here. So I'm actually going to be drawing this piece by piece based on the dimensions that we have that we've already drawn out. So I'm going to start with the legs. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to draw a leg that is 7/8 of an inch. And the other thing that's nice about this tool is that you can do everything with the mouse, and you can try to get the measurement the way that you want with the mouse, but that's typically not the way that you do it. To be exact, you literally, there's an ability to simply enter the values. So I'm going to enter the value here of 7/8 of an inch by 2 inches. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. And I'm going to take that surface, which basically just gives me the profile of the leg, I'm going to pull it up 30 3/4 of an inch. And so I have the basis of a leg right there. Now, one of the things that we're going to do, if you look at the leg at the side over here on these legs, is I'm going to actually put a mortise into it, because that panel is going to fit into that mortise. So from here I'm going to put in a 1/2 inch deep mortise, a 1/4 inch wide, a 1/4 inch from the outside edge, and 1.5 inches up from the bottom. So I'm going to use this, basically it's a little measuring tool, and I'm going to make a mark 1.5 inches up from the bottom. And then I'm going to cut this mortise, and I'm going to do that by marking a line over here 1/4 inch from that side, and then I'm going to make a rectangle starting at that point, going to the top, that is 1/4 inch wide. From there I'm going to push it in 1/2 inch. So we now have the rabbit in that leg. Now, I did not make any components or anything yet, because this is literally just like we were taking a stick of wood and cutting it. It's all part of the material. So from here, I'm going to make this a component, and we're going to call it the front leg. From here, I want to make a copy of this, because we have 4 legs to do, and I don't want to end up having to redraw every leg every time that I want to do this. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to make a copy with the tool, and I'm going to move it back 14.5 inches from the front.
You might want to mention how you do that. What you do is you choose the move tool, which is M, and hit the control key, and it will make the copy.
Right.
Now, did you measure 14 inches on the inside or the outside?
I moved it 14.5 inches. If you look at the actual measurement, the measurement from outside to outside is 16.5, because the leg itself is 2 inches. So by moving it here 14.5 inches, you end up with 16.5 inches. Yep. Now the problem here, of course, is that this rabbit is on the wrong side. So there are tools to basically flip these things around. So I'm going to take this leg and I'm going to tell it to flip it along the green axis. There are 3 axes that you can flip from. So by doing that, if you take a look, I now have the rabbit in the right place, 1/4 inch from the outside of the leg. Okay. All right, now the back of the leg, we need to have a space. You can't really see it on this because it's in the back. But we want to basically just put a panel, a 1/4 inch panel that is going to fit along the flat of the back. So I want to cut a rabbet out of the back of the back leg. So because the back leg is now going to be different from the front leg, we want to make the back leg unique. And so there's a way to basically just flag this, make unique, and then actually change the name from leg front to leg back. Yeah, this is a little bit different than what I'm going to draw. If you take a look at this panel actually insets. So what I wanted to do is I want the back to be flush. So we are making some design modifications a little bit here. So the rabbet that I'm going to cut here is going to end up having the panel come flush to the back. Okay, so the way that I want to do that is I want to edit this component, and I want to put a rabbet that is 5/8 of an inch wide by 1/4 inch deep. So I'm simply going to draw a rectangle up here that goes 5/8 of an inch wide, and I'm going to push it in 1/4 of an inch.
Why are you doing that difference, sir?
It's just a design preference. It's what I prefer to see on the back is more of a smooth side instead of an inset. We could do it this way, but it's just a design choice. Okay, so now you can take a look, and we have two different legs. Although they did start off with the same, they are now unique. So the next thing is we need to connect these legs with rails. So I'm going to build a block. Get rid of this. That is 3/4 of an inch wide, thick, by 13.5 inches long. And I'm going to bring that up 1.5 inches. And from there, I'm going to cut a tongue on either end of this, because we're going to actually put the tongues into the slots in here. And what is this? I'm going to do a full height, 1/2 inch deep, 1/4 inch from the outside edge, 1/4 inch thick tongue. So to do that, there are a couple different ways to do that. One way is to take this line, as I edit this piece, I'm going to take this line and I'm going to make a copy of it by using the move tool and then hitting the control key, then dragging it over, and I'm going to drag this over here 1/4 of an inch, and I'm going to do 2x on it, which basically makes 2 copies of it. And that was, Ricky, that was your suggestion from the other night. So that's basically a good quick way of getting these rectangles lined up. And from here, I'm going to push this in 1/4 inch. I'm sorry, 1/2 inch. On both sides. And then we're going to repeat that process over here.
The way he moved that second one so fast, once he moved 1.5, he double clicks when he goes to the move tool, and he does what you just did last. There's a lot of little quick things you can do to speed things up.
For Jerry's benefit and others that may be having the same question, what Tom's getting ready to do now is to put a rail down here in this region to make this whole section stronger. And also what he's doing is there's a dado in each one of these legs that goes all the way to the ground. He's changed that to do a stop dado on that.
Yeah, by doing the stop dado, you don't have to see that groove.
If you look that up, it's really thin, light wood, and if you feel it on the bottom, there's no rail going underneath there. It's just open where it slides in.
Yeah.
And it's only like 1/4 inch thick. So
my experience with plywood is when you leave an exposed edge like that, it is going to chip.
Yep,
well,
absolutely.
That's how that looks in the bottom.
Yeah. So yeah, again, there are simple design choices. If you're really going to try to do a full replication of like an antique piece, you probably don't want to do that. But I think we're going to be more interested as we build this as a project in making it stronger. So from here, we need to cut a rabbet in this piece that's 1/2 inch deep for that 1/4 inch panel to go in. So all I did was basically make a rectangle from one tongue to the other, and I'm going to pull that down 1/2 inch. And that now basically is ready to be placed in here between the legs. So we're going to make this a component. We're going to call it the rail for the side. From here, we can move it. We're going to pick up this corner piece here. We're going to slide it in right there. Now I'm doing that because it doesn't belong there, but it makes it easy to have a reference point for my next move. And so the reference point basically says, take this and move it up 1.5 inches.
Is that the back or the side?
This is
Side.
This is the side.
Yeah, it has to be.
Yep. So from here, I can take this and I want to replicate it to the top. So I'm going to take this same piece and I'm going to do a move, but I'm going to press the control key so it makes a copy, and I'm going to move it to the top of these legs. Now again, we have the issue of wrong side because with this component. So we want to flip this around. One of the other means of moving these things around is when you have the move tool selected, you'll get these 4 little plus signs on the piece. And those allow you to do a simple flip. So I'm just going to flip this 180 degrees, and that way we're solid on top and we have the groove on the bottom. But it's essentially still an identical piece. So that component is still the rail side, just one's on top and one's on bottom. So now we'll build the panel, the side panel that goes in there. And we're going to come down here again on this main surface, and we're going to make this 1/4 inch thick and 13.5 inches wide. Zoom in here, and we're going to pull this up to a height of 27 3/8. We're going to select all those components, make it a panel side. And now we simply push this or move this into the groove in these pieces in here. And the way that I'm going to do that quickly and easily is get it close, anchor it, and then from here I can simply move it in 1/2 inch by selecting that surface and move it down a 1/2 inch. And so now that panel is set inside those rabbets, nice and clean.
If you enter an incorrect dimension,
You can just type over it.
no, but will the software tell you that it's incorrect?
There is no incorrect dimension.
I mean, for example, if you had entered a panel that was 42 inches wide, and it clearly did not fit, it was too big,
Yeah.
would the software tell you that?
No.
No.
No, it's just, it thinks anything is
You
possible.
can check your fit here. If you make one of those legs disappear, and there's a way to do that. Hide it is what they call it. You can check the fit, and then unhide it back.
Well, this one, you could also go to the x-ray and look at how it's setting inside the board.
But essentially at this point we now have another component made up of components. So I'm going to select all of these and I'm going to call this a component. I'm going to call it side left. So from here, now that this is a single component, I can take and move it and copy it to the other side. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to actually take that and move it over 19 inches. But because of the way that the rabbet is set up, it's not right. So we want this to be flush to the outside. We want this to be on the inside. So we're going to have to change it around. And we can't simply flip it because we have 1.5 inches reveal off of the bottom and we're flush on the top here. So we're going to simply take this component, we're going to call it unique, and we're going to call it side right, and then we're going to move some of the components around. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to come over here and we're going to take this right leg, or this back leg on the right side, and we're going to flip it.
Have to double click to edit any component. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's good. Flip along the red component. Now, as soon as I do that, you can see we have the back rabbet in the right place, but this is still not aligned. So we want to move this over. So now the rabbet's aligned. We're flush on the outside. We have the rabbet in the right place. So the back leg is good. The front leg still needs to be moved.
Tom, why couldn't you have just flipped the whole assembly on the red axis?
Got legs.
Because of the bottom, if you flipped it, rotated it along the red axis, then this is going to be on the top. You're gonna have the reveal on the top instead of the bottom. So that, yeah, there is no, just the geometry of it. There is no quick, easy.
You run into this when you have different thicknesses of wood a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is another thing. We could have made this a little bit simpler by making the rails 7/8 of an inch thick wood as well, same as the legs. So it would have simplified it. But I'm also cheap on wood, and 3/4 inch wood is, I've got plenty of it, so I don't want to end up using 7/8 inch wood where I don't need it.
Right.
So that's why we made a design choice there. It's all choices. You can do it any number of ways, but okay. So now we have these two components lined up properly, and we just double check my measurement.
For those who don't have much in the way of SketchUp experience, he's making quite a deal about components. The components are kind of like the parts that you make in the shop. You're making a leg, you're making a rail, you're making a stile. In SketchUp, there's an additional benefit to making these things this way, because if you take two parts in SketchUp, I mean, you do a dandy job of making two different parts, two different locations on the model. Once you stick those two things together, they are now inseparable. You start dragging one of them, and it's going to drag the other one along with it. It's going to elongate it, and you're going to get some really bizarre looking stuff. So when you make these things into into components, it changes that behavior. It now treats it like a pile of parts that you'd have on your bench.
So if you wanted to, in this case, if you wanted to say, make this a little wider,
yes,
you could take it and just those components and stretch the whole component, and it would basically, everything else would then line up.
Yeah, you could do that. I don't know if you would normally. Normally you take each individual component, because if you want your rail to be 1.5 inches thick, regardless of how wide the overall unit to be, you still want it to be 1.5 inches thick. So there are certain you don't want to stretch everything.
Well, I'm just thinking, I was thinking
Yeah.
if you keep it, the circumference would be the same, you just wanted to make it longer.
Yeah.
Can you stretch the component that way? Yeah.
Yes. Yes, you can. Yeah, with the tool here, you can do a resize in any number of directions. You can go just one wide, high, or thickness, or all three. So you have that ability. Okay, so now we need to basically create our back rails. Now we actually had discussions on this. We can use tongue and groove again and draw all of those individual components. Or what I might be tempted to do, and don't be angry with me for this, but I like to use pocket holes. So those of you that are anti-pocket holes, just keep your opinion to yourself today. So I'm gonna make the rails along the back simple, and so I'm gonna come over here. I'm gonna start at this point. I'm gonna come over to this point, and I'm gonna come up. So it's gonna be 18 inches wide and 1.5 inches thick. And or high and 3/4 of an inch thick. And I'm going to take that component, call it rail back, and I'm going to take this and I'm going to move it up 1.5 inches. Now from here, I'm not going to go and draw out the entire you know, the holes that you would actually see here for the pocket holes. But what's nice about this particular design like this is I can make a pocket hole, put a couple of pocket holes right here, and then the 1/4" panel that goes in the back is going to cover it, so it'll never be seen. And that's what's nice. It's quick, it's easy, it's strong, and it'll never be seen.
But pocket holes, are you talking about like the Craig?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so from here, we're going to make a copy of this and stick it along the top because we need it there. So that's quick and easy like that. And then we're also going to do the same thing. We're actually going to take the same piece and we're going to move it across to the front. So now we're almost framed in. We've got our rails on the sides that hold the sides together. We have our rails that are connecting the sides like this. So now we're going to create our back right quick that fits inside this rabbit. And again, the easiest way to do that is to use reference points from the pieces that are already there. So I'm going to simply take a rectangle starting right here in this corner. Actually, not in this corner. I'm going to take it starting in this corner. And come all the way down to this side right here. Now I want this to be over here. I don't want to actually take it all the way to the bottom. When you take a panel like that to the bottom, what happens when you go to move it? You end up hitting that bottom piece and you rip it up. So I never like to put, not only that, but when you have uneven floors, you try to keep your bottom exposure to a minimum, right? So never, the general rule, no panels across the bottom. So we want this to be flush with the bottom of this, and by using a reference point starting here, we can just drag that over there, click that, pull that out 1/4 inch. We have our panel for our back. Okay, good with that? All right, so now we're going to have a little bit of a decorative piece for our front rail on the bottom. If you take a look at this piece over here, there's a little bit of a profile. So it's not just your standard 1.5" rail on the bottom. So they've got a little bit of a lip here and then a simple curve. So we're going to actually draw that curve on the front rail. And we're going to start with a, and this one I'm actually going to do a tongue and groove just because I've got the measurements for it. So we're going to come over here, I'm going to start with a piece that is 19 inches long by 3/4 inch thick. And I'm going to pull it up, instead of 1.5 inches like all the other pieces are, this one's going to be 2.5 inches.
How do you determine which of those measurements to put in first? The 19 or the 3/4? Or,
Excellent question. I'll show you the next piece that I draw. Whenever I do that, I'll show you how that's determined. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put the tongues on these. And I'm going to show you a different way to do that now. Than the way that I was using when I was showing a full tongue. This is going to be a fully inset one. So you can use the offset tool up here to actually do that. So the offset tool says go find a surface, find an edge to that surface, and then offset your measurements from there. So I clicked on that. Now I'm going to come in here and you can see that this is an offset from all edges that are connected to that surface. And I want that offset to be a simple 1/4 inch. That's really nice because then from there I actually have drawn my tongue. So from here I can push this surface in 1/2 inch. And I have a nice clean tongue on that side. So that's a really handy tool for that type of a situation. Do the same thing on this side, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch in, and we have the foundation for our piece. From here, we're going to make a number of different measurements using our tape, and we're going to mark 1 inch from the bottom. We're going to mark 1/2 inch in from this piece, 1.5 inches, Same thing on this side. And we're going to use that now to draw an arc from this point to this point. And to do that, I'm going to use the arc tool. I'm going to click on that intersection, and then I'm going to bow it out. You can see how that moves like that. You can do that freehand, or you can actually select the radius that you want it to be. And I want that to be a 1/4 inch arc. So we'll do that on that side. Same thing over here, 1/4 inch. And then draw a line that connects that point to that point. From here, I now have surfaces. Like if I just use my selection tool, I can see that I have two different surfaces. Because these lines all connect, it creates a different surface that you can work with. And with that, I can actually take this surface and remove it.
Sometimes when I try to draw guidelines, for whatever reason, the guidelines don't show up.
Yeah, okay. That's another very common thing. I'll show you that here on a separate piece. Alright, so let's say I'm going to make an 8 by 10 by 3/4 inch block. Alright, so I'm going to start taking my rectangle tool and I'm going to draw down here. Now, I want to be very specific with my dimensions. I want this to be 8 inches wide and I want it to be 3/4 of an inch deep, like you were saying. So I can type in 8 by 3/4, or I can type in 3/4, comma 8. Which one do you do first is your question, right? If you look at the bottom left corner, it says dimension 17 3/8 by 4 1/4. Depending on which way you start drawing that rectangle, it might have said 4 3/8 by 17 1/8. But so it changes simply based on which direction of the mouse you happen to choose first. The easiest way to know which one you should type first is after you've drawn a general shape, like I've done here, you now know that 17 1/8 is much larger than 4 1/8, which means that it's asking for my width measurement before my depth measurement. So from here, I know I want that to be 8 inches, comma 3/4 of an inch. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I'm going to say 8, comma 3/4, and I have the exact measurement that I want. So that's how you do that. So I'm going to pull that up, say 6 inches. And so now I have a panel to work with. Now let's say that I wanted to make those guidelines. If I use the guideline tool, if I come over here and I start on any part of the line, anywhere, and I move up, you'll see the line that goes to the side. You see the dotted line? There you know that whenever I drop this, I'm going to get a line. If you come on an end point like this, and you move up, you will make a mark. I'm going to put a mark right there at the 4 inch mark. But you don't see the line. You see a little dot, a little plus sign. You see that?
Yeah.
But that's all you get. And the reason is because the line is there, but it's against this line. And because it's against another line, the tool does not make a continuous dotted line. It only makes a tick mark. So I found that whenever I use a tool, the easiest thing to do is, because all I really want is that intersection point. So the easiest thing to do is to find a surface and then come up here and say, I just want to come up here 4 inches. And then sure enough, it's going to put it right on that same spot. Does that make sense?
Gotcha.
Also remember too, on a guideline too, you can draw it not on the surface. Be careful, because sometimes
Yes.
if you're not careful with your mouse, you'll actually pull it off of the surface, and then you've got a guideline, you think it's where it is, and it isn't.
Right.
I've never done that.
I haven't done it since Tuesday night.
You get used to it.
Yeah, you do. Okay, so this piece is now finished. So I'm going to make this a component. And I'm going to call this front rail bottom, I believe. Yep. Rail, front, bottom. And I'm going to move this in. And I'm going to start off with it flush here. And I'm going to shift it up 1 inch off of the bottom.
When you're picking your reference points, is there sort of a guideline for that? picking reference points to
The,
move
yeah,
things?
yeah, the guideline is basically to choose the point that you know is going to line up with another point. So in other words, whenever I move that piece, I can take and I can say, using my move tool, I'm going to select this reference point right here, and I'm going to move it. And you can do that, that's fine. But if you're trying to line it up on the left, it's hard to do. If my selection point is right here, whereas I know that I want this point to join that leg, right? So if I select my move from this piece, I know that I can come in, I can immediately click and find my edge.
Your snap tubes work better if they have a hard point to go to.
Right.
It will have a snap tube if you grabbed it in the middle, but you can barely feel it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't feel it at all.
Yeah. So it's yeah, definitely go corner to corner if you can.
Yeah. You get used to that too.
Okay. All right, so that's that. Now we are ready to basically put some supports in for the bottom shelf. So we actually want to put just a plywood bottom in here, and we want it to go and sit in here nice and flush. This is actually, this front, if you take a look at it from this angle, actually sits 1/2 inch proud of this piece right here. You see that? So our shelf, we want it to sit flush with this, and then the top of it is going to be flush with the front. That way we don't see the edge, it comes out nice and clean. But the problem is that there's not enough material here to hold that shelf. So we need to put some supports in. So we're going to do that by coming over here. We're going to go against using this piece as a reference. We're going to make a rectangle that goes from here over to here. And we're going to pull it out 3/4 inch. And we're going to make that a component. And so that will give us a nice, clean, nice strong surface to be able to set that panel on. But we can't use just one. So we're going to take this and we're going to make a copy of it and stick it over here on that side. And that's close, but we're still not done. We still need another piece basically that's going to go in the middle to make it a little bit stronger. So on this, I can't just do a duplicate because it's not long enough. So I'm going to have to draw a piece from scratch. Now I can try to do what I did with these and use these reference points to make a rectangle. But as I said before, this front piece is not flush with the back piece. So if I try to draw a rectangle from here to the front, that looks right, doesn't it?
It's not.
But it's not. It's actually at an angle. One of the ways you can tell that it's at an angle is looking at the measurement. With those selected, this measurement is not exact. The length is about 14 3/4. That's an indicator that something isn't right, because that should be an exact measurement, because all of our measurements have been within the like 1/16 of an inch. So that it should be a clue right there that what you're trying to do is invalid. So what we're going to do is literally just build the piece separately and then stick it in there with the measurement that I have. There's another way to get the exact measurement as reference points, but this is the easiest thing to do. So what is that measurement? Center.
You're going the wrong direction there, aren't you?
No, because I want to go front to back, so I'm going to take it this way.
Well, I thought you were going to make a strip across the back for support.
Well, no, I wasn't going to actually do that. Although that would be another option. You could actually do that to make it stronger along the back. But I've chosen to go front to back because that way it gives me center support. Okay, so this is going to be 14 3/4 inches long by the 3/4 of an inch thick. Oh, I did it wrong. So let's do that again. 3/4 by 14 3/4. Pushes it back that way. And this piece is only going to be an inch thick. Now from here, I want to be able to put this in the center of these pieces right here. And there is a nice reference way to do that. I'm going to come in here, and this actually goes back to your point about with your rule of thumb for dragging and dropping, right? And so I'm going to actually choose the move tool, and I'm going to hover over until it finds the midpoint on that component. I'm going to now pick it up, now that the midpoint is selected, and I want to put that on the midpoint of this back piece. So I simply take this, move in here, and I zoom, or I hover until it finds midpoint in component. It'll click to that, and that is now dead center. And what's nice is you can now take your measuring tool at any point and say, okay, well, if I want to know what that center point is, I can come over here and measure, that's 9 inches. And then sure enough, of course, the other side is going to be the same. Center point, 9 inches. Cool? So now you can see, if we look on the inside, we have 1/2 inch to work with to be able to set that 1/2 inch panel. And so that's what we'll build next, is the bottom shelf. Now the bottom shelf is going to have some cutouts, right? If you look at this, if we want it to be flush with the outside panel and the back panel, we have these little cutouts. So we're going to build this bottom shelf over here on the side. And we'll start with a rectangle. It is going to be 18 3/4 inches wide by 15.5 inches deep and 1/2 inch thick. From here, we're going to make those little cutouts. And Ricky, did you have a different way of doing this than the last way that I did the cutouts last time? Okay. So, because I'm big on guidelines, I love the use of guidelines. So I'm going to make a guideline here that is 1 1/4 inches from the front.
I guess you could draw the rectangle on the corner if you knew it.
Yeah. Yeah, if you knew what exactly it was, you could do that. That would be quicker, but...
Yeah, we don't know it.
Yeah. So 1.75 from the back, 3/8 from the sides. This side and this side. From here, all I want to do is cut that material away in the corner. So I'm going to use a rectangle to do that. A rectangle from that point to the corner. A rectangle from that point to the corner. And this point. Now that those rectangles are in there, I have surfaces. You can see if I select that center surface, those corners are left out. So now I can simply come in here, push-pull that away. Do the same thing. I can double-click this now. Double-click over here, and we have all the cutouts in place.
Could you hit delete on that corner and get rid of that part of it? You had the little dots in it and then hit delete with it.
You could do that, but if you do that, it only deletes the surface. So the lines are left there. You'd have to delete them individually.
Okay.
So you have to be very cognizant of that. For example, if I select that surface right there, I can press delete, but all it did was delete the top surface. So even the bottom surface is still there.
Now it's another trick.
Yeah, now it's a metal tray, exactly.
Figure that out now.
Yeah, Jerry, the rule is on that is when you have the push-pull tool selected and you double-click on the object, it's assuming that you want that gone.
Right. Okay, so now we want to move this bottom shelf into place. Again, per what we were talking about earlier, the best way to do that is to pick a point that I know is going to come flush. And so I know that I want that shelf to come flush with this piece here in that corner. So I'm going to choose, with my move tool, I'm going to choose that point right there. So I'm going to pick it up from there. I'm going to drag it over, and I'm going to drop that point on that point. And now everything lines up perfectly. Make sense? Okay, so that's our bottom. Now we're ready to make the what I call the bowl support. The piece that goes on top here, this is not the lid. These are two different pieces now. This is actually the piece right here that holds the bowl. And again, we've made a little bit of a design decision here. This is actually a very thin piece. This is like 3/8 of an inch thin that holds this bowl, and I don't like that thin, so I'm going to go with 3/4 of an inch thick material here to hold this bowl. Again, personal preference. If you're doing it for an exact match, you would want to make that exactly the same. Okay, so we're going to start here with a block that is 20 3/4 inches wide by 17 inches deep. So that's 20.75 and 17 inches deep and 3/4 of an inch thick. Now from here, we need to cut the holes. We need to cut the circles out for the bowls, for this soap and the main basin. And I have determined that the center point for these is for the big one is 8 11/16 from the front and left side. So I'm going to use my measuring tool again and come up here 8 11/16, and from the left side 8 11/16.
How fine a measurement can you do with the tool?
You can do as much. You can do 128th. You can do whatever you want. So
You have to make that in your settings, though, don't you?
yeah, well, in your settings, you can actually set it to what you want your maximum to be, you can literally tell it anything that you want. But all of your snap tools and everything else can be adjustable. I typically have mine set to my finest is a 32nd of an inch if I'm building furniture. So for something like this, I want this to be 3 11/16 from the back. So I'm going to type in 3 11/16, just like we would write it on paper. But I could also have put 3.87654, you know.
Doing that earlier.
So you can do it either way. So all these guidelines are basically just to give me the center point for these two circles. So now that I have that, I can draw the circles. And I'm going to make the first one a 6.5 inch radius. So I'm going to start there and I'm going to come out 6.5 inches. And the other one is 1 7/8 radius. From here, we now have, again, multiple surfaces. So I can see that surface, and that one. And I'm going to simply pull that down 3/4 of an inch, which basically cuts it away, and do the same thing there.
Can you do an oval or something like regular shapes?
Yes, well, like we did on the front profile, we did that arc. Oh, you're talking about an actual oval.
Yeah, in case you had an oval sink if you wanted to.
Yeah.
You can stretch a circle to do it.
Oh, because I've never done that actually.
There's a way to do it, yeah. You have to choose the individual segments of the circle and then move it. It does work.
Now, when you did that move or that push pull on that last double sets of circles there,
Yes.
you just double click after you told it to move that small one. You just double clicked on the large one and it did it automatically?
Yeah, there's a shortcut for push pull that says that after you move any surface down using the push pull a certain distance, it remembers that distance. So whenever you use a push pull the next time and just double click, it says I'm going to move it that same distance. But you have to be careful because, let me show you over here. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to do a push pull in this direction, and that's important, which direction. I'm going to do that in this direction 5 inches. So if I come in here and I'm going to make another rectangle and I'm going to select that surface and I double click, what's it going to do?
Go up. Oh.
Yeah, not what you expected. It went the other direction. So depending on the orientation of the surface, it may or may not give you what you want. So just be cognizant of that.
So I assume there's an undo in case you make a mistake.
Yes, there's always an undo. So from here I can come up
You'll
5.
now.
Oh yeah, I always do.
Now if I come in and I put a rectangle over here, it comes in that same direction. It has to do, most of the time that you use the double click is whenever you're on the same surface, just drawing another piece. But yeah, so I wanted to show that to you because you're going to say to yourself, what just happened? Because it can throw you, but it has to do with orientation of the surface. Okay, so so we have our bowl cutouts. And now what I want to do is I want to actually create a bullnose surface. So I don't want this to be a big old 3/4 inch piece of wood just sitting up here. On this one we have this little 1/8 of an inch round over, but I've decided again design decision to just make this a full bullnose. But I don't want the bullnose to go all the way around. I only want it to go on 3 surfaces. So here's how we're going to do that. The back surface is going to remain flush. And so what I want to do is I want to create a, what is my radius that I want to do? 3/8 inch bullnose. So it'll be just a real nice smooth bullnose off of this 3/4 inch piece. So I'm going to take my measuring tool and I'm going to come over here, 3/8 of an inch. And I'm going to draw an arc that goes from this point to this point out 3/8 of an inch. It gives me a perfect 3/8 inch bullnose, right? From here, I want to basically take this profile that is right here, and I want to push it all along all three, not 4 surfaces or lines on this surface. Normally, you would use something like this to be able to. You would use the Follow Me tool, which is up here. And you could take and create a profile like that and say, I want to create that profile along the entire surface by clicking on the surface, clicking the Follow Me, and then clicking that. And then that will give you that surface along the whole thing. But again, we don't want to do that. We want the back to be flush. So we're going to have to do this basically the manual way by using the Follow Me tool, and then zooming into that surface and then dragging along the profile line that you want it to be cut. It's like taking a router to the edges that you want, is all it's really doing. And then you end up with that. And now we want to do the exact same thing on the bottom. And I'm going to show you how easy it is to mess this up.
You want me to do that?
You want to do that? Ricky was really good at it.
I did it last Monday too, really well.
Okay, so I'm going to take this, again, just like I started on the other one. Oop. And I'm going to start dragging this, but I'm going to let my mouse drift over here. And oh my gosh, look, it's just created profiles just all over the place. It's totally messed it up. It's got rid of that surface. So I'm going to undo. You do have to be careful when you're in this manual mode like this to make sure that you get just the lines that you want. So sometimes there is a little eye-hand coordination involved.
Now what if you want to do something like a compound curve, like an OG or something like that? You
can do that basically just by coming in. I'll actually do that for you on another piece. Come in here and you could say, I'm going to just draw a line from here to here on the blue axis, a certain distance, maybe from here to here, and then an arc from here to here, like this on the face. So whatever profile you want. As soon as you have that profile done, you can use the Follow Me tool to actually cut it. Not one of my finest designs right there, but it serves the prompt.
Yeah, in reality, that probably doesn't make that much difference because you're going to use a router bit anyway. So
yeah,
whatever the router bit is what you're going to do.
Right.
Can't you download profiles from Freud's?
Yeah, I believe that you can. I don't know if it's Freud's, but I've seen it done somewhere else.
Freud used to have one.
Did they?
They still do it.
Or you could draw it yourself. You can go to the Ford website, download a picture of the profile and draw it yourself.
Yeah. Okay, I also want to show you something else here. You see all these reference lines? This is all a fact that, remember how I said at the beginning that there is no such thing as a curved line? So there is no curve here. This is just, here's a line, here's a line, here's a line. They're all straight lines. These dotted lines here are basically references from this point to that point. So this curve is actually made up of a surface here, 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 and here. So knowing that will allow you to sometimes understand what happens if you get delete happy. So if I come in here and I click this and I press delete, what happened? I literally removed that part of the curved surface.
Blew a hole in it.
Yeah, blew a hole in it. So you have to be cognizant of that. If you don't want those lines there, you can use the erase tool, but holding the control key down, you can click on, no, now it's not doing it. Okay, well on a solid line it'll remove it. I'm not sure why these now are showing up. Ricky, do you know why
Try
that is?
to edit, delete guides, see if that works.
And how
No.
thick is this piece?
There is a way to get rid of those.
Yeah, but I'm not sure why they're showing up right now because they're even doing it on the circles.
I'm thinking if it's a quart, but it ain't gonna be right.
Yeah, but anyway, I mean that's all cosmetic anyway, and there are ways to clean that up. I'm not sure why they're showing up right now.
Circle
Yeah, you
preferences,
can have that.
Yeah.
show guides or not.
But anyway, so we have our profile now. We have our bull nose on our top. We want to put our top up there in place. But first we want to make it a component. And now we're going to choose a reference point for our move. And the reference point I want to use is this point right there. And I'm going to orient myself and bring this to the back. And I'm going to stick it right there, but I'm going to move it. I've dropped it there, but I'm going to move it 1/8 of an inch out. Because I know that it has a 1/2 inch overall reveal on the top. This is a 3/8 inch radius bull nose, so 3/8 plus 1/8 is my 1/2 inch overhang.
Why would you use that reference point instead of a center line point?
You could have done that too. Very good. Yep.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that would have been quicker.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So now we've got our top or our bowl support, and now we're ready to build our top. Our lid. So we're going to start the lid with a rectangle that is 18 1/4 inches wide by 15 inches deep, 3/4 of an inch thick. If you take a look at this lid over here, it's actually made up of a set of framing and then a panel that fits inside it. So that's what we're going to build. The panel that sits inside sits proud of the framing. So we start with the frame, the panel. We're going to call that a component. And then we're going to build our blocks that go around it. The blocks are going to be 19 3/4 inches wide, for the front anyway, by 3/4 of an inch thick. And they're going to be 1 1/4 inches tall. So you'll see actually this is not oriented yet, but the frame of course is thicker than the panel. From here we need to miter the corners, and to do that we're going to use the protractor tool. Coming to the protractor, we're going to use this surface, we're going to come over and make a 45-degree angle. I'm going to do the same thing over here. And then we're going to draw lines and that gives us a surface to work with. I can now push-pull this surface away and double-click over here because I'm, again, going in the same direction on the same surface, and that push that one away. So now we have nice clean miters on either end. We can get rid of our guidelines. We can make this a component, which we will call top edge front.
Are you putting a dot in there, in between those words?
Dash.
Doesn't have to.
I- yeah.
That's just the way you do it. You don't have to.
Yeah, it's free form. You can do whatever you want. So from here, I'm going to orient this to that surface, but not, I'm going to start flush, but I'm actually going to drop this down and give this a 1/8 inch reveal. And so that will allow me to have that surface like we see on this piece here. So you see that little lip right there. And we may actually I think on my original one, I think I actually made that a 1/4. I'm going to drop that down a little bit. So now again, we have this as a component. We know that the front and the backs are exactly the same. So we're going to take and we're going to replicate this using the move copy tool. We're going to drag it to the back here. And we're going to flip it. And my favorite quick flip is that. Although I will, let me do this. I will give you the big secret that I've given in the special interest group to knowing the flip long tool. So as you can see here, we have the flip along, and there's a component red, component green, component blue. Now the question that's often asked is, which one do you use to flip it in the right direction to be able to turn it around? And the answer, and this is the big secret, is the answer is the one that works. So you actually flip it along, blue, did it work? No, that wasn't the right one. So you flip it along the green, and that one worked. So that was the right one to use. That's the easiest way to do it. You could actually, the correct answer is to look at to see which axis you're aligned with and all that. But honestly, as you're into the details and you're zoomed in, you don't really think about that.
I will tell you this, if you've made a component and you moved it and flipped it along an axis, eventually the direction that you move it does not work.
Yes.
Because you made it in an orientation earlier that worked, and you oriented it differently. That's why he's saying really the rule is whatever works.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the direction that you move it along isn't the right one.
Right. Right. Okay, so now we're going to make our matching pieces on the sides. And we now have some really good reference points, so I don't even need to use my measurements. I'm just going to make a rectangle from here to here. And I'm going to push that in. 3/4 of an inch. And then I'm going to cut my miters. And again, I have references even for the miters, so I don't need to use my protractor tool. I can simply come over here, draw that line. Oop, push pull the other way. Draw my line. And I have a nice piece over here. I can make a component. And we'll call that the top edge side. And we repeat over here. And flip this one.
He just looks.
I do. So now we have the basis for the top. All framed out. We could, if we wanted to, we could actually draw a bevel on this to make that, to show how that's smooth and all that. You can get into the fine details of it. A lot of times for my own drawings, I know what I'm going to do. I don't really have to draw all the details unless the customer wants to see it. So Okay, we're going to, oh, we want to put a mirror in this. So we're going to go to the underside of this, and we're going to put an 8 by 10 inch mirror on the bottom of this. So I'm going to start over here just somewhere in the center, and I'm going to draw out a mirror that is 10 inches by 8 inches. And I'm going to pull that out 1/8 of an inch. And I'm going to give that, make that a component called mirror. And I'm going to fill it. There is no mirror material, but I like to basically just use the metal corrugated shiny, and it kind of gives a mirror-like look. But we want to center it in the box. So again, using the reference points, I'm going to do a move. I'm going to pick up, find the center point by just getting close, and it'll say midpoint. Got it. And I'm going to hold the shift key down. So I can move whenever I hold my shift key down, after I start moving, I can move my mouse up, down, left, or right. It doesn't matter. It's only going to move it in one plane. Now I can come in, I can find the center point on the box, drop, and as soon as it clicks there, now I have centered in that direction. And I'm going to do the same thing up and down. So I found my midpoint on the component, start dragging, hold the shift key down, find the midpoint there, and now I'm dead center. So using those reference points are really, really helpful for getting quick access to things. I'm not going to bother to draw on the actual piece. They have built this in so that it's actually framed in with some 1/4 inch framing material around the mirror, and then it has these big, bulky, ugly clips in here that hold the mirror in place. I don't think that we want to do it in this particular way, but there are a dozen different ways for us to do it. We could choose to frame it in. We could choose to just use mirror clips. That's just kind of an open discussion right now, so I'm not going to bother drawing those individual pieces in.
We're probably just going to glue it.
We're probably just what?
Got to glue it.
Yeah, we may just glue it, exactly. Okay, so I'm going to select all these pieces, and I'm going to make this component called a lid, so now I can just move it any way I want. And so I'm going to take this, I'm going to move from that reference point up to the top, and I'm going to stick it, or actually I'll use your suggestion earlier. Instead of moving that corner, I will select the midpoint. How's that? And then I can just find the midpoint on here. And then we're nicely centered. I'm also going to, I like to do this a lot for anything that has a door or a lid that hides other pieces and it moves. So this is eventually going to have hinges. So I'm actually going to make 2 lids, one in the closed position and one in the open position. So I'm going to use the move copy to make a copy of this initially in exactly the same location. So you can see I'm making a copy, but I'm going to drop it right on top of the other one. And now with 2 of them there, I'm just going to select the first one that it gives me, and I'm going to rotate it. So using the rotate tool, I'm going to rotate it just where the hinge would rotate, starting there along this axis and up 90 degrees. So now we have 2 lids. Obviously we don't want to show both of them at the same time, so I'm going to come over here to my layers, and I'm going to create 2 layers. One's called lid open. Actually, I'm going to do this because I do doors as well on the same layer. So I'm going to say open layer and a closed layer. Now from here, on my entity information, I'm going to take this lid that's selected and I'm going to put it in the open layer. I'm going to select this one and I'm going to put it in the closed layer.
Did you make them both unique? I didn't catch that.
No, they are the same component. So if you change one, if we decide we want to move the mirror, we want it to be the same move for both components.
Okay,
So now I can say I want to take off my, deselect my open and leave the closed, or I can take off the closed and leave the open, so you can see it either way.
The tool basically assumes the component is in all layers unless you change it here.
Yes.
And you darn sure don't want to ever draw in anything but layer 0.
Yeah, that's actually a really, really good point. You can see all of these layer capabilities here that you can select and deselect. Everything by default goes onto layer 0. Unless you specifically tell it, like I did, that I want this component to be in the open layer. You have the ability to change your radio button selection here, and if I do that, and I'm on sides right here, anything I draw will be in the sides layer, but it's drawn in the sides layer. If you ever want to move it off of that layer to somewhere else, you just create all kinds of grief. So the rule is, regardless of what the tool allows you, never ever ever draw anything except on layer 0.
So layer 0 basically is all layers, and then if you do your drawing there and then select where you want it.
Where you want it to be seen. The others are basically just the layers that you want visible.
There are cases where you would draw on another layer, but it's generally not in our use for sure.
Right.
It's in design, where people use design software or use the software for designing room space, like interior design or something like that.
Yep.
There's some needs for it, but for us, just don't ever draw on anything but layer 0.
Okay, so I'm going to quickly draw some doors here. So the door is going to be 8 7/8 by 25 5/8. Oh, sorry, by 3/4. And now up 25 5/8. And so we're just going to basically make that a solid panel door like that. We'll make that a component called door. And we're going to put it in place. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put it and drop it dead against that corner. But as we know, we can't actually build a door that's flush. So I built a measurement in with a 1/16 of an inch gap in mind for both sides. So you can see here the full gap right now is 1/8 of an inch. So that means I can come up here a 1/16 of an inch, and I can come over a 1/16 of an inch. And then I have the gap that I need. And I'm going to do this, and I'm going to replicate this door now over to here and do exactly the same thing. Move that a 1/16 of an inch. And now my door is spaced in the way it should be. My two doors. So the only thing that remains with the doors is that you can see on this one, there is a lip that is put on one of the doors, so one door closes on top of the other and it hides the seam. So we're going to build that piece and we're going to put it onto one of the doors. Okay, so we're going to start here. This little door lap is going to be, what did I say, 1 inch wide by 1/2 of an inch thick. And it's going to come up 25 5/8, same as the door. We're going to make that a component called the door overlap. And we will put a little profile on it because we don't want it just to be a simple stick board. We'll actually put a little radius on here. And we'll come in 1/4 of an inch there. And using our arc tool, we'll draw a simple arc. Using our push-pull, we'll go to that extent, we'll go to that extent, erase our guidelines, and we're good to go. So now we can take that component and we can move it to the edge of one of the doors. And that now hides our seam. Okay, now just as I did with the top, I want these doors here to also show in an open position so I can see the inside of the unit. So I'm going to take and I'm going to do a move copy, drop it right back to where it was, rotate it, we'll come out here 90 degrees, do the same thing over here. You know, with the rotate tool, it always asks you which plane. You can see how it changes from red to green to blue. See that? This is a little bit difficult because we want to make sure we get on the very bottom of this. We want the blue axis. I could have zoomed in just like I did there to be able to find the blue axis so I can make that rotation. But there's a quicker way to do it rather than zooming in like that. You can simply find any other surface that is in the plane that you want. So like the bottom of the lead, for example, and as soon as you get that, or here's a bigger surface, as soon as you get that, you can lock that in by holding the shift key. So now I'm locked in on that blue. I can move anywhere I want, and it's going to rotate it only on the blue axis. So I can take that there and come out 90 degrees, and I have open doors, but I want to put these on the open, and I'm going to put these two doors on the closed layer.
Still got your little centerpiece.
Oh, I did it again. Must have somehow moved. Turn all layers on. Front. That's in the open. That's enclosed, that's enclosed. Okay, so that's what we look like when we're closed, and that's what we look like when we're open.
How did you know to make the copy and then put it right back down in place?
Well, the reason I did that is because whenever I rotated it, I wanted it to be rotated from that same location.
So you were creating two layers there.
Well, I was creating two components. One was on top of the other. And whenever you select one, all it does is select one of the two that are identical, that are right there. And then, but it's only actually manipulating, whenever I rotate it, only manipulating one of the two. And that's why I was able to do that.
That's good.
Why did that strip go with that side?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's because this strip was not part of this component. And so what I really should do, and I can do that, is make this part of that second door component. So I'm going to select this door and this door, the one on the right side that is open and closed, and I'm going to make them unique. And we're going to say door right. And so now those are unique from the doors on the left side. I'm now going to take this, and I'm going to, this divider that normally stands on its own, I'm going to get rid of it, I'm going to delete it, and I'm now going to edit this component. Actually, I'll do this one, it's easier. And I'm going to place this component on the door itself. And you can see even as I'm editing this one, it's also editing the one in the back. And I can come out of that. Now, it'll be there, or it'll be there.
Good job.
Okay? So the only other thing left is the shelf, but we are out of time, so
That's fine. That's
yeah.
Two questions.
Yes.
One, can you explode all those components into like a cutlass?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, we have an add-on plug-in tool that says if you take all these that are selected like this, and we go into our plugins, we can say Cutlass Model, and it will actually give us after I save the file. No, it'll actually give us a complete breakdown of all the components, all their thicknesses, the whole bit. So you basically take this out to the shop, cut all your pieces, you're good to go. Yes, Bill.
Is there a way you can give it an exploded view?
There is. I wish we actually had time for that, but you have to do it manually.
Move each individual piece?
Yes, you basically separate each individual piece. That's why we have things like front, sides, parts, and all that I have up here.
Right.
These are different scenes that you can actually have that will actually show you how to do that,
Yeah.
or set you up to be able to do that. And I actually do that generally.
Yeah.
I actually have it exploded just like you have in the magazines.
Yeah.
It's exactly the same
I've
thing.
done it that way, but I didn't know if there was.
And you can put that on a
quick
separate layer?
No, there's not a quick way.
You put that on a separate layer.
I think
Yes.
that was my same question, but maybe a different way. Along with the cut list idea, can you get a cutting diagram that shows you the board feet you're going to
Yes.
need of each of the components? Maybe that was the
You
same
can also
thing.
go over in an empty area of your drawing and bring out each component one at a time and put your dimensions on each component, whatever's the easiest way.
Yeah, because there's a lot more to this. This is really, we've just gotten it set up, and we do have a cut list, but really the next steps are to do the breakouts.
Right.
So we can see how the components fit together from a drawing perspective as if you were doing it for a magazine, and in addition to that, what I always do with my parts layer or my parts scene is I'll actually take all the individual pieces, I'll use the measurement tool to actually show that this is a 1/2 inch tongue on this particular thing, 1/2 inch groove, all the measurements are all in there. They're all in different scenes so that you can actually go from the assembled view, the assembled scene, to the front side, to the sides, parts, all of that all broken out.
Do these components end up in a library that you can pull into other projects?
Absolutely, you can create your own component library. I've done these so much that a lot of the design pieces that I have are actually on the web that you can actually download for free.
Now these components automatically go into a library as you're drawing this?
They're not automatically. Just,
you have to put them in.
You'd actually have to put them in. Or you can actually take this piece. I do this a lot whenever I'll do a big kitchen, and so I'll actually have a model of the person's house or the rooms that we're working in as a separate model from the individual pieces, but then you can take one model and import it into the other model. So basically everything in SketchUp is essentially one giant library.
Now this doesn't break it down to like subcomponents, but when you're looking at a door, you have the panel, you have the rails, the style, and each one is a component.
Yes.
So then you can take the whole thing and say that door assembly as a component.
Yes, just like we did with the sides.
Yeah.
We built the sides out of 2 legs, 2 rails, and a panel. And then we made that a side assembly.
So like this whole thing you can say as a component.
Absolutely.
And then you have all the separate parts that make it. You know, I'm just saying on some things you have a component, sub-components.
Yes.
But they're not called sub, they're just all.
Right.
Same.
Right. Okay.
All right. Thanks for your time.